Lighting is the difference between a room that looks fine and a room that feels intentional, elevated, and alive. And today we're diving into the good stuff, the design secrets that make your home feel like your favorite meal. Cozy, warm, and maybe a little bit spicy. If you're all about great food, cozy vibes, and a little creative flair, you're definitely in the right place. Let's jump right in. Before we start sprinkling light magic everywhere, let's talk foundations, the qualities of light that shape every room. First of all, is the hue. It sets the mood, warm, neutral, or cool. Think of it like seasoning. A little warmth makes everything feel cozy. We'll get more into hue and kelvins later, but the brightness can be directly associated. Typically, the crisper the light, the higher it is on the Kelvin scale, the brighter it tends to be. Watts are now just the old label on the jar. They're not quite as important as they used to be in the incandescent days. Against the new LED lights and some of the things we have nowadays, it's not quite as important. The room here looks to be about 5,000 Kelvin and way too bright. Most people in their homes do not use 5,000 or above for their lamps because it tends to be too bright or too white or bluish white. So typically in your homes, you're going to see 4,000, 3,000 Kelvin, and you're going to not use wattage. You're going to use the lumens, which for a 60 watt light bulb in the old days, it's about 800 lumens. So depending on what kind of lighting that you plan on setting up, remember that 800 is your typical 60 watt light bulb, and numbers below that are going to be a softer, lower light. Numbers above that will tend to be brighter and much heavier. So, while we're not through with the kelvins, we are discussing at this point brightness, and that can vary from room to room, and lights should and will change. This room, compared to the prior room that we just looked at, is a more subdued and much more pleasant lighting effect. So direction shapes the room. Side lighting adds depth, overhead lighting flattens, and backlighting can be the chef's kiss. However, there are other options that we need to discuss, such as the dynamics of lighting. It should definitely shift throughout the day, bright for chopping veggies, soft for winding down. Kind of like the sun rises and the sun sets, the lighting needs to shift within your home and not always be at its maximum. This image is obviously AI generated since we have lights on the wall shining down with no lighting fixtures. However, it does show a pretty good comparison of the flat lighting that you would get from overhead lights, and the second image to the right shows more directional lighting from lights pointed towards the wall to wall wash. And you can definitely see the difference in the image and the quality of lighting that you get just by simply changing direction. And since we're on directional lighting, I wanted to just slightly go over a few of the lighting types that you may see. Your direct lighting, such as can lights in the ceiling, or ceiling mounted fixtures like the single bulb lights that come in a lot of new construction homes. Your indirect lighting, which may be a pole lamp or a lamp that has a base and shines the light upward towards the ceiling, not downwards. The semi-direct lighting, which is a similar concept, but more light shines down than it does up based on the lampshade. Semi-indirect, which you used to see a lot in the MCM era over countertops and things of that sort, and diffused lighting, which is basically every light bulb nowadays. They're all diffused. You don't necessarily see the clear bulbs anymore. They're typically white frosted or something along those lines. So this would be the equivalent of an exposed bulb with a frosted globe. So I did want to go over a little bit of lighting dynamics. Here, this is actually my kitchen. And I have Carl's lighting on my stove. Unfortunately, I have no way to change that. But you can see the overhead lights, you can see the pendant lights, you can see the lights on the stove, You can see the under counter lights. So I have plenty of lighting for what I need. And after the transition, you can see that I only have the pendant lights on, and they have shifted color because they're smart lights. But at night, this is a much softer, much general light for the kitchen area. We may actually turn on the overhead lights and use the dimmer, depending on what we're doing late at night in the kitchen. But typically, it's just those two pendant lights with a more orange color. And that shows the difference of how you can treat your lighting, switching dynamically between day and night. Now that we've covered the basics, let's talk about the four jobs of lighting. Basically, we should have ambient or visibility for our lighting, which are typically ceiling fixtures or your can lights, which provide a flat layer of lighting. It does not highlight anything, it's just a flat layer and covers the entire room and makes it easy to move around without walking into stuff. Um, and then the next one would be your task lighting or focus lighting. Things like pendants above your kitchen cabinets would be a perfect example of this. Anywhere that you want to get very focused and well lit areas where you may have your cutting board in your kitchen or on your kitchen island if you're using that to prepare food. Wherever you're doing preparation or where you need to perform a task, that's the kind of lighting that we're talking about here. The third one would be your accent lighting. This usually and typically lands in your nightstand or table lamps. Um, they can be uh, they can be very uh, atmospheric. They can create atmosphere on their own. Uh, they can be wall sconces. They can be a lot of the uh, light that you see in a room that is not necessarily uh, there for visibility alone, even though they can provide that. Um, but yeah, more table lamps and that kind of thing. And then finally, you have your decorative lighting. Uh, I have some of that here. We have the Babylon lamp, which I'll put up here. And this is more of a decorative or an atmospheric piece. Basically, whether the lights on or off, it's a eye catcher. It's a focus spot in the room. This can happen with accent lighting as well. Uh, sconces and table lamps can definitely be uh, leveraged as design or atmospheric. But in general, these are the four major layers or tasks or jobs that you want your lighting to provide. I told you we weren't done with Kelvin quite yet, or color temperature. This image that we're looking at is a pretty good one that I found. It kind of gives you a good idea of what Kelvin does. It basically is showing you the effects of the higher Kelvin levels, which tend to be a brighter and whiter light, and the lower Kelvin levels, which tend to be more yellow, orange, or red. Typically, you're not going to see anything outside of the 2000 to 5000 K range. Um, but the basic rule of thumb for Kelvin, for me, and most people in design, and correct me if I'm wrong if you're a designer, but you use 2 to 3K in your house, Kelvin, and you use your bright whites like that in your garage, and that's about it. You really don't want uh, and I mean, this is a personal thing. If you love the blue white of a higher Kelvin, like the 5000 to 8000 range, more power to you. But most people don't want to live in an operating room or a gas station. So, you know, think about it that way.
We're squabbling over light bulbs now?
No, we're addressing why your house looks like a gas station at 2 a.m. You went 5,000 Kelvin, Carl.
That always makes me laugh. I don't know why. I just think it's hilarious. Anyway, um, let's talk about how to build a lighting plan. It's kind of like following a recipe out of a cookbook, you know? Uh, you can adjust and make changes. We're not baking here, we're just kind of cooking, you know? And the same thing applies to design. While there are rules and frameworks that you can use, you don't have to follow everything anybody says. You know, your taste is your taste, uh, and you should always remember that. However, if you're going to do a lighting plan, and I'm saying this to people that aren't custom building a house and can map every single light on their floor plans, I'm more talking to people here that are buying a house that's a few years old, or perhaps is a new house, but it's it's a McMansion, let's say. The lighting's already done before you ever get there. So you're stuck with the can lights, and you're stuck with the overhead lights that are given to you in a design plan, or you bought at someone else's house and their lighting plan is already in place. Um, what you're really trying to do at that point is map where you can put lights. We're not worried about the overheads as much. Uh, as we are, because a lot of that's already going to be in place. Or if it's not, uh, the locations for those lights are already in place. Uh, so that's what I'm trying to discuss here. The first thing that you want to do, though, in any case, is actually get a rough sketch or a rough idea of what each room does, its general shape, where the windows are, and where you plan on putting your furniture. Uh, and then it's going to matter what's happening in each one of these zones. So your kitchen lighting is going to be different than your living room lighting. Your living room lighting is going to be different than your hall lighting. Your hall lighting is going to be different than your bedroom lighting, so on and so forth. Um, so, all that being said, the biggest activity zones that I have dealt with are typically in the kitchen, where I think you need the most lighting. The bedrooms are typically pretty easy to work with, um, to me. Um, maybe your dressing area, like a walk-in closet, um, in your bedroom. Those are the bigger places that you're really focused on your lighting. Maybe an office as well. But in any case, what you're really trying to do is stick to a generic rule. It's pretty much known as the 5-3-1, which is uh, five task lights, three ambient lights, and one general light. That's kind of the lighting equivalent of salt, fat, acid, and heat and cooking. Um, but it's going to depend on the size of the room. It's going to depend on what you want in your room. Uh, Typically, I don't like to use can lighting. That's not my thing. I tend to rely more on table lamps or floor lamps, or even fan and or the center of the room type lamps. Um, I'm not a big fan of can lighting. However, they do have their place. It can really help you when you're working in a particular area. Specifically, I can't speak today. The kitchen. Um, then we'll talk about some fixture types. Your down lights, which would be your can lights, your pendants, which we've already discussed in the kitchen, for focal points and tasks, your sconces and or table lamps, or floor lamps, which are typically ambient light, visible interest, and those aren't necessarily movable, but your floor and table lamps definitely are. So when you're drawing out this map, you should keep in mind the fact that some of these are permanent fixtures, and really focus on the ones that are not as fixed in place, because those are going to make the difference in the placement in your room as to the comfort level and the ability to um, adjust and be dynamic from sunrise to sunset. All right, since we went over the general purpose, design guides and mapping out the room. Let's take the apron off and let's walk through a couple of rooms and see what we can cook, huh? Let's start with the kitchen. Typically in a kitchen, you're going to want your under cabinet lighting for prep work. You're going to want your pendants, and they're typically 30 to 36 inches above the island. Uh, you want your recessed lights. Hopefully, they've been installed properly and they should be evenly spaced and in the walkway areas typically. Um, not hope. I hope for everybody's sake that you don't have can lights directly over your island or in your workspaces. And then some people like LED lights, like the runner lights, to add ambience, like at the top of the cabinets, if they're the cut cabinets and they don't run all the way up to the ceiling. Uh, or you may want uh, added lights in other areas, whether it's your pantry. But a lot of the ambience lighting or the rope LEDs and things like that, I don't think those are necessary. Those are definitely optional for in cabinet or top of cabinet lighting. So for the most part, again, you definitely have to have your under cabinet, your pendants, and some overhead lighting as well in the kitchen. While I do not like can lights, I do have to admit, in a nice kitchen, having those can really, really brighten up the space. Uh, then we'll move into the living room. You're going to have typically in a newer house, you're going to have the can lights. If you do not have them, you still are going to want a central light, whether it's on a fan or a chandelier or a hanging light, whatever you choose there. And then you'll have task lighting. So you may have, like in our case, we actually have lamps on either side of the couch. If we're reading, if we're watching TV, it's nice to have that uh, lower level of light so that you're not having to depend on the ceiling lights or the ceiling fan or whatever else. You can turn the overhead lights off at night and have a nice, softer, kind of ambient setting with the shadows versus the way the light spills out of some of the shades. Um, yes, one of the things that I did make a mistake on is having the mirrors on the wall in this open floor plan. And at night, the kitchen lights reflect off the mirror, and you can see them on the TV if you're at the far side of the couch. It's not that devastating, but it can be annoying. So, try to remember that you want to avoid glare if you have a TV in your living room, because it can really affect the viewing. And you really want to try to play with light and shadow and move your lights around to get the best look for your space. I had put pictures up of my space, and I'll put one up for this as well, and show you kind of the things that we're attempting to do in our space. And finally, um, the bedroom. Uh, Obviously, when you're in bed at night, you're going to want dimmable lights, which we have with the recess cans in our bedroom as well. Uh, I don't prefer directional lamps. Anybody that reads though, or maybe up and does not want to bother their partner, the smaller uh, little lights that you can bend that focus in a smaller space are really nice. I just like the bedside table lamps. I think they work just as well, but that could be bothersome to certain people. So it's going to depend on your own needs. Um, but that's my take on that. You're definitely going to want your master bathroom and that walk-in closet or dressing spaces to be well lit. Um, you may actually want to add motion activation or smart lighting switches um, to further what you're working on. But both to me To me, both the living room and the bedroom need some flexibility in your lighting choices. Uh, and both of those areas should definitely have dimmers. The kitchen should too, probably at least on the overhead lights. Uh, but those are some of the common things that I would suggest if you're trying to map out your house for the first time and deciding on what kind of lighting fixtures you want to put in place. So I'm trying to stuff 5 pounds of feed into or 10 pounds of feed into a 5 pound bag. How about that? So we're going to go over some common mistakes and some of them I've made as well. But one of the biggest mistakes is relying on just one overhead light. So we kind of talked about this a little bit. Having the can lights are not my favorite thing. However, I can't just depend on a central light and just that light to light up my rooms. One central overhead light is not going to light the entire space. You need to have lights uh, spread out through the room to get an even and layered feel to your lighting. Um, just one overhead light is it's not going to cut it. It's way too flat. It does not light the entire space, and typically that's not going to work to give you the look that most people are looking for. Um, Definitely add layers, whether it's sconces if you have that capability or floor or table lamps. Uh, Use the can lights with a dimmer switch, whatever it takes. Just one light is not going to be a pleasant experience in your room. Not having dimmers. Having dimmers is essential in today's world, especially with some of the newer LEDs. Uh, Dimmer switches actually work well with them. There are dimmer switches built specifically for LEDs. If you don't have dimmer switches and your can lights are always at full throttle, that can be a real pain. Also, if you're using uh, an overhead light without a dimmer, that can be an issue. Not every light has to be dimmed, however. And if you wanted to, you can buy the plugs that now allow you to dim, and they do so in smart lighting packages as well. But um, nearly everywhere that you can put a dimmer, you probably should. Use natural light during the day. I actually, we have so much natural light in here, I actually shut the windows when I'm taking pictures because it's too bright. But the living room is a great example. We have a wide open patio door in the back. We pull the curtains back and use that for we don't run our lights in the living room all day. As a matter of fact, we really don't run them throughout most of the house during the daylight hours and use the natural light from outside uh, during the daytime. Um, Mirrors help with that. We have a lot of those in the house, um, and that can actually help a lot. The fourth one is one that I am prominently guilty of, especially in an open floor plan. Using mirrors in a natural lighting home actually helps a lot. You can actually get more light with mirrors in your house, and we have plenty here. Quite enjoy them actually. So uh, the one problem is at night. Uh, the kitchen lights, even when they're dimmed and turned down, um, can reflect in some of the mirrors back onto the TV set, or even in the bedroom where we have some mirrors. Uh, it can cause reflections that you may not want to see in certain scenarios. So just keep that in mind that your light placement does matter, uh, and you should definitely, definitely keep that in mind. And the final one, which is one that I have in my kitchen and it irritates me to no end, but this the vent hood that we had only came with 5,000 Kelvin. Uh, and I only use it when I'm actually at the stove cooking at night. Then I'll turn those lights on because it's nice to have that light at the stove, but it typically does not stay on. But mixing your color temperatures, you don't want to mix your bright whites with your warm and cozies. It just doesn't work. I actually have a picture in this video where you can see the clash, and it's in one of the kitchen pictures where I turned on the vent stack lighting, uh, and it's definitely noticeable. So you don't want to do that throughout your rooms. All that being said, lighting is one of the most powerful design tools that you have. Uh, I hope this helps you if you're looking into lighting. Uh, you can really transform any space, no matter what the furniture is, whether it doesn't matter what style you're looking at. You can really transform any space just by proper lighting. And typically, it doesn't require a full renovation. Uh, but if you love great food, cozy vibes, and making your home feel like you, stick around. I'm just getting started, and I plan on breaking this video down. So, MG out. We'll talk to you guys later.